involving the Mycenaeans, all along the coast by Volusia. Conflict spread over 200 years. The tablet stated, Mycenaean warriors had once fought at the gates of Volusia. If scholars could show that Troy and Volusia were the same place, they could then compare the legend against historical records. The tablets might at last reveal the real truth of Troy. But it wasn't to be a simple task.
The problem was we couldn't really prove it because we didn't know exactly where Volusia lay.
This was the task for archaeology: to discover if Troy and Volusia were the same city. A recent breakthrough has given us the answer. It involved a mysterious message on a mountain, inspired detective work, and following an army on the move. The first clue came from a tablet that recorded that the military might of the Hittites was being unleashed in the late Bronze Age.
The Hittite army is on the move from its homeland. We know it's moving westwards, and we know that its final destination is the kingdom of Volusia. But we didn't know precisely where Volusia lay. In fact, it could have been anywhere along this coastline. At all events, we know that the Hittite army continued to move westwards. But then, did they go north or did they go south?
Troy is situated in the north. So if Troy and Volusia are the same place, then the Hittite army should have headed north. But the tablet offered no clue. The direction the army must have taken was finally revealed when the inscription on this mountain pass was deciphered. It marked the boundary between two kingdoms and indicated the Hittite army had headed north.
Once they reached close to the western coast, they then turned northwards, bringing them right up into the region of where Troy was located. So really, the conclusion now seems inescapable. The kingdoms of Volusia and Troy Ilion are one and the same.
The scholarly evidence was compelling. The mythical city of Troy and the Hittite city of Volusia may well be the same. But what was missing now was supporting archaeological evidence. That evidence was to come from the water tunnel that Manfred Kaufmann had excavated at Troy. And the breakthrough was to do with dating the tunnel. Most people believe this tunnel had been built 1,000 years after the late Bronze Age. But Kaufmann was less sure.
Outside there are basins of Roman period, so it is a Roman structure, a Roman tunnel system, but then we were suspicious that it is older.
The reason the date of the tunnel mattered so much was because of this tablet. It contains a reference to a water tunnel at Volusia. So if this tunnel at Troy was from the same time as the tablet, here would be archaeological evidence that Troy and Volusia were the same place. Everything now depended on the date of the tunnel. But was there anything in it to date? Then Kaufmann noticed that over the centuries, water had seeped into the cave walls and left behind it layers of limestone. It's the same process that furs up your kettle. Here it's left slabs on the side of the cave.
So here is the outer surface. That means the last time that water was coming pouring through it. It's like a teapot, this calcareous matter, pouring through the rocks and accumulating here. This is the inside when it started.
Kaufmann then realized that the limestone layers contained something he could use to date the tunnel. Tiny quantities of uranium. Back in the lab, Kaufmann's team analyzed the minute amounts of naturally occurring uranium in the cave limestone. The uranium undergoes radioactive decay at a predictable rate. They used a mass spectrometer to measure the decay, and so determine how old the tunnel was. When the result came back, it was astonishing. The tunnel had been started in 2600 BC, and it had been in use when the Hittite tablet was written. Science had delivered the supporting evidence. Troy and Volusia were the same city. We can now build up a likely scenario of what might have happened to Troy. The tablets show that the Mycenaeans had fought at Troy in the late Bronze Age.
The Hittite texts mention battles that took place. The Hittite records indicate furthermore that the Mycenaeans were not only interested in this region, but had been actively fighting on and off for more than 2 centuries.
The tablets show that Troy was an ally of the Hittites. If Troy was attacked, the Hittites were likely to come and fight alongside them. So Homer's legend appears to have been based on a real conflict between 2 superpowers of the late Bronze Age, the Mycenaeans and the Hittites.
I believe that these conflicts were distilled into a tradition of a single war lasting 10 years.
It seems the war occurred because Troy was a wealthy city in a vital strategic location, and that both superpowers wanted to control it.
Was the Trojan War fought for love? No. Was it fought because of greed, for money, for territory, for ambition? Of course. That's what most wars are fought for. Troy was caught between 2 mighty empires, the Mycenaeans and the Hittites. It was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it was crushed.
So there was no face that launched 1,000 ships. The war, or wars, were not fought for love, but more likely for gold and loot. And what of the Trojan horse? There are no clues in the texts, nor in the archaeological record. Perhaps it just shows that Homer really was, above all, an amazing storyteller.